Dear organizers, dear guests, thank you very much for this invitation. I'm truly delighted to be in this conference today and make my contribution, which provides us with an important opportunity to highlight the role of integrity and background check in restoring the public trust in the judicial system. Can I change this? Can you see my presentation? Okay, yes. I would like to start with a few words in relation to a deep justice reform which took place in Albania in 2016. Albania is implementing this comprehensive justice reform, addressing the long-standing deficiencies in respect to independence, accountability, efficiency, and professionalism in the judicial system. The constitutional amendments of 2016 brought radical changes and strengthened the role of the governing body of the judiciary, which is the High Judicial Council. Some of the innovations and some of the advantages presented by the current organization are the fact that clear division of tasks is ensured, and the responsibilities between institutions of the judiciary is ensured. So, for example, now we do have two different institutions, the High Judicial Council, which deal with measures relating the disciplinary proceedings of judges, and at the same time we have the High Inspector of Justice, who is the body that initiates such an investigation. Additionally, reviewing the composition of the HGC, starting with the election of its members and the involvement of civil society representatives, people from advocacy, but also from the academic field, narrowed the gap between the members which were coming from the judiciary and the non-lay members. The depolitization of such a body was assured by the exclusion of Minister of Justice as a HGC member. Previously, the Minister of Justice was a member of the HGC. This was another step towards a clear division of tasks and division of executive powers from the judiciary to the executive, and the depolitization of the council. Full-time membership and the predictability of establishing standing committees along or coupled with transparency in decision-making have created conditions for a better functionality and efficiency by the HGC in comparison to the forerunner institution. So, pursuing the Constitution of Albania and other deriving legislation into force, the HGC was established by the end of 2018 as an independent constitutional body governing the judicial system, mandated with new competences and powers. Functions related and matters pertaining to the status of judges, their ethical evaluation, administration of court budgets, and also which is one of the most important things is that the High Court for the first time falls under the auspice of the HGC. As a matter of fact, the procedures in relation to the selection, appointment, and promotion of judges are at the heart of the HGC mission. Moreover, the philosophy of these procedures has changed with the justice reform and with the amendment of the legislation. And these procedures, the philosophy of these procedures is all about why we needed a deep justice reform and why such a reform was initiated. This was to aim to clean up the system from judges and prosecutors with suspicious integrity and links with crime by completely transforming the way how judges or prosecutors nowadays are appointed. So what do we check while we select, appoint, or promotion while we select, appoint, and promotion or promote the judges? We, of course, we base such procedure in a special verification everybody knows formal and legal criteria mainly focused on the professional capability of candidates or their professional experience, assets, and also background and integrity check. I will not talk about the formal and legal criteria or the professional one, as we will only focus on asset and background and integrity check. So what is also important is that taking into account the Albanian legal framework in the selection and appointment and promotion of judges, we in Albania consider that these procedures have the same background. For the same, based on this fact, we also conduct similar verification in relation to asset and background checks. So it is Article 32 of the law which prescribes or describes comprehensive rules for assets and background and integrity verification. It firstly defines these verification procedures for the process of selection of judges, thus mandating the HGC with a duty to requesting information about these two components. Who is responsible for what? So, as I mentioned, for the professional experience, the HGC or the School of Magistrate are responsible. But who is responsible for asset declaration and who is responsible for background and integrity check? Why I want to speak for asset verification and also background and integrity check is because in Albania, when we made the changes, we wanted to assure that personal but also financial integrity are verified. So the verification of assets is done mainly by HIDACI, which is the High Inspectorate for Declaration and Audit of Assets and Prevention of Conflict of Interest, also related to other type of investigations, which are mainly related to tax and customs authorities. So what we verify whether the legitimate financial sources of the candidate justify or not his assets, and the accuracy of information provided in the declaration of assets. Asset investigation process is complemented, as I mentioned, by financial, tax and custom authorities, which also they provide information. In relation to background and integrity check, such a responsibility is a shared responsibility because we receive information from different law enforcement bodies and institutions. And this is related to the General Prosecution Office, National Bureau of Investigation, as well as State Intelligence Service, or any other relevant state authorities, such as it might be also police. The aim here is to verify that the candidate does not have connections with the organized crime. And this is based on the law on organization and functioning of institutions for combating corruption and organized crime. Additionally, the HGC may request information which are also related to the discipline of judges or of candidates judges. And this information is provided by disciplinary authorities having supervised the discipline of candidate while in the other professions or jobs that the candidate might have done in the past. Based on the information provided as a result of the asset and background check and integrity, the HGC decides on the eligibility of candidates by considering qualification, by considering to qualify or to disqualify the candidate. Now it is important also to explain a little bit who is checked. So actually we check every candidate who is willing to enter within the judicial profession, starting from the moment that they are candidates for magistrates to be admitted for the initial training program organized by the School of Magistrate, But also, while they are graduated magistrates to be appointed in the judicial office, and also during the promotion procedures for all candidates who express their willingness to be promoted to higher or specialized level courts. We also check and conduct the verification, these two verifications that I mentioned, for non-judges candidates to be appointed to the High Court, and also for the chairpersons or candidates which would like to be elected as chairperson, excluding the chairperson of the High Court. It is important to explain that acknowledging the importance of guaranteeing a professional and merit-based judicial body with high integrity, the HGC completed immediately after its establishment a package of sub-legal acts, and more precisely decisions 75 and 70, which are related to criteria but also to procedures in relation to such verification. These regulations lay down predetermined rules and criteria, thus assuring that selection, appointment, and promotion processes are based and conducted in open, professional, and transparent manner. The process, as I mentioned, is defined in these decisions of High Judicial Council, and this process is conducted in three-level basis. So at the level of rapporteur, which the rapporteur is selected by a drawing of lot by the High Judicial Council. At the level of the committee, we have two committees which mainly deal with verification of fulfillment of criteria for candidate judges or judges. So we have the Career Development Committee, which deals with judges, and the High Judicial Council creates or establishes every time an ad hoc committee for verification of candidates who want to enter in the School of Magistrate. Of course, the third level is at the level of the Judicial Council. Now, let's go back to the procedures in relation of background and integrity checks. So the candidate who is willing to be either appointed or promoted, or also the candidates who would like to join the School of Magistrate, is informed about the verification procedure and the documents to be completed within 3 days after the appointment of the rapporteur. So, as I mentioned, the High Judicial Council, as soon as the Council opens a procedure either for appointment or promotion of judges or chairpersons of the courts, also nominates, opens the call, receives the application of different judges, and starts with the procedure. The candidate has to submit the following documents: a self-declaration form on guaranteeing the integrity of persons elected, appointing, or exercising public functions; the application form on information before appointment selection in senior position; and an authorization form for the Council to make verification of documents and data. This last authorization allows the HGC to conduct the verification and obtain data from other institutions which, as you will see, are involved in these verification processes. After the submission of these documents, within a very short deadline of 5 days, the Council, through a special structure, starts the verification of the background checking of the candidate and its integrity. Why we have a special procedure? We have a special structure. Actually, we have a special structure because those people need to have security authorization because they gather information which is classified as confidential or secret. So if considered applicable, the chairperson of the HGC also sends this self-declaration form to the General Prosecution Office. The General Prosecution Office should provide a report in relation to the integrity of the candidate in question within 2 months' time. What is also important is to understand that depending on the results of the auditing, the rapporteur can also ask for additional information from the bodies that I mentioned, from the State Intelligence Services, from the General Prosecution Office, or from the National Investigation Bureau. Or at the same time, the rapporteur can also ask written explanations from the candidate if there are things to be clarified, or if there is a discrepancy between the self-declaration and the information provided by other institutions. Following the findings and conclusions of all these bodies, the rapporteur, which gathers the information, also prepares or drafts a report, which is immediately submitted to the standing or ad hoc committee, which will evaluate the report of the rapporteur. At the very end, the committee sends the information to the High Judicial Council, and based on the recommendation of the committee, the council decides the qualification or disqualification of the candidate. Which are the reasons why a candidate can be disqualified? Allow me to tell you that this is done if it is verified that the person has inappropriate relations or contacts with persons involved in organized crime, has been a member of a collaborator, or has been favored by the state security before the 90s, before the fall of the communist regime, as some countries who have undergone this process. This is, we consider, a lustration process. Also, he is disqualified if the person is or has been an intelligence service collaborator, informant, or agent. There are also 2 other reasons why the candidate is disqualified, and these are more of a technical nature, and they are based on the fact that the candidate has not filled in or filed the self-declaration forms, or he has refused to sign the authorization for the High Judicial Council. Allow me to inform you also about the asset verification, which is a similar procedure, but it is related to different institutions. So, as mentioned, the candidate is informed on the initiation of verification procedure. In this context, on the asset verification procedure and on the documents that need to be completed. The candidate should submit the documents which are different from the background and integrity check, and which are related to declaration of assets and private interest of the candidates for different positions in justice institution. And also the person should sign an authorization form for the council to make the verification of data. Immediately after the submission of the report, and within a very short deadline of 5 days, the High Judicial Council informs the High Inspectorate for Declaration and Audit of Assets and Prevention of Conflict of Interest on the list of candidates which need to be assessed. The rapporteur selected for each candidate starts the verification, and in relation to the candidate itself, but also in relation to his family and related persons. This includes information gathered from the financial, tax, and custom authorities. After the gathering of this information, The Hidachi provides the information to the High Judicial Council within 2 months from the reception of the declarate of the candidate. The rapporteur, which gathers very comprehensive information from the High Inspectorate, from the other bodies, tax, customs, etc., prepares a report suggesting either this disqualification or the disqualification of the candidate and submit it to the relevant committee. The relevant committee evaluates the report and submits it to the HGC, which, based on the recommendation of the committee, decides either for the qualification or disqualification of the candidates. Which are the reasons for the disqualification of the candidates? It's important to mention that the disqualification of the candidates is decided by the council, taking into consideration the specific circumstances of the case, but also based on a proportionality principle. And when the data is obtained by a legitimate source, it decides his or her disqualification if the candidate's financial resources do not justify his or her assets, if the candidate has not declared properties, assets, or data on private interests, which are mandatory to be declared, if the candidate has made false or incorrect statement of assets, and if the candidate is found in a situation of conflict of interest. Also, there are 2 other reasons, which, as I mentioned, also for the background and integrity check, are very technical reasons. If the person has not filled in or filed the declaration of assets, or if he or she has refused to sign the authorization for the council. There are also other criteria which the council evaluates in order to complete the profile of the candidate who is aiming for the judicial position. These are in relation to if the person has been removed from the office for disciplinary reasons, or if there is a disciplinary measure still in force. If the person, but this I think is information that all the countries assure, that the member is not a member of political party at the moment of the candidacy, and if the member should not be member collaborator or favored by the state security before the 90s. Based on the report provided by the respective authorities and in the opinion of the rapporteur, but also in the recommendation of the committee, the council decides whether to qualify or disqualify the candidate. The verification process is completely confidential. This process is based on information provided and cross-checked via different sources. The reasons for the disqualification of a candidate from the High Judicial Council are mainly a negative report from the High Inspectorate of Declaration of Assets, a negative report from the authorities dealing with the background check, or other disqualifying grounds. It's worth mentioning that during this process of verification, the rights of all candidates to the judicial function are fully observed and assured. The applicant has the right to be informed or acquainted with the documents belonging in his or her file, but as well as lodge, complain or appeal to the competent court against the decision of the High Judicial Council for their disqualification. The competent court shall decide on the appeal within 2 weeks after its submission. So I have to admit that building up an internal oversight mechanism for strengthening integrity and accountability of judges is not an easy task. There are a lot of challenges in its implementation that we have faced. As I have also presented in my PowerPoint presentation, the procedures are pretty complex. There is a high number of institutions involved and which should cooperate in a timely manner. In Albania, we also face a lack of digitalized registers in order to obtain data on real time. Another important thing that I would like to mention is that there is a difference between asset declaration verification and background check and integrity. And this is due to the fact that the process is for the background and integrity check is more complicated, as it is based on information classified as confidential and secret. And the use of such information has to be, the use of such information has to be used with a lot of restrictions, but also through secure channels. So this is an additional challenge while such background and integrity check is performed. Also, dilemmas in relation what to consider appropriate or inappropriate contact have raised, and that's also a challenge on should we consider inappropriate contact if the person has met with a person once, twice, or if the information is provided from different sources. But beyond the complexity of these verification processes, mainly due to the involvement of a wide range of law enforcement authorities and institutions, it is of an utmost importance to restore public trust in the judicial system. This is a sui generis process taking place in Albania for the first time. And as such, it has its own challenges, which I briefly mentioned. The most important challenge I can also highlight that is the cooperation and coordination, the challenge in the coordination, fruitful and timely manner cooperation among all state institutions involved or engaged in the asset, background and integrity check. But cooperation and coordination, as it is a challenge, I consider that is also a guarantee. We consider that is also a guarantee not to compromise the process. Asset, background, and integrity check is a leverage toward legitimacy, integrity, accountability. And last but not least, public trust on the justice system. Thank you very much.